Okay, apologies, everybody. Someone came to the door, so I had to stop my recording there. What I was saying was, things you can do for yourself with your essays and so on. Of course, there is the question of research. You will become expert in JSTOR, which is an online repository of electronic journals, books, and chapters, and also library search, through which you gain access to materials online. And also do remember that there is a library there that has physical materials, books and so on, that you can still get a hold of. And so that's important for you in researching your essays, okay? So for example, I give my students for their seminar something about the civil wars of the 17th century in Britain. And they're encouraged to read around that topic, to use different databases, to find out who has cited that article, to read around it, and then on that basis of research to come up with an answer, to what extent do they agree with the author's argument there. Remember as well, as it says on this slide, to footnote every time that you refer to an historian, to his or her work, or to any primary sources or websites that you find. There is an information sheet on Learning Central for this course on referencing, and I advise you strongly to take a look at that. There are also reference sheets on writing the essay, and so do remember that there is a huge amount of resources that are available to you on the Learning Central module site that you need to be aware of, in addition to just lecture recordings coming up, seminar readings being available, and announcements. Remember, there are resources like this one that are there throughout the semester. Now, if you're going to answer the second question about comparing and contrasting the use of sources and argument in academic history with the sources and argument in popular histories, the same kind of things prevail as with the first question, that academic history needs a book published by an academic historian here, scholarly article in a scholarly journal. Popular history is defined by you, but also I would sort of suggest, if you're concerned about where those parameters lie between popular history and non-popular history, again, just get in touch with your seminar tutor and ask. Again, you focus on one topic, make sure your essay addresses the issues of secondary sources and arguments for academic and popular history, footnote and so on, and include bibliographies. Now, this is really important. You're not going to know what your argument is until you've done a bit of reading and probably a bit of writing as well. Don't panic if you don't absolutely know what your argument's going to be, and that it's right from the start that you're convinced about what you're going to say. As you'll see in your first sort of proper seminar about what is history with E.H. Carr, he makes the point that writing is part of what he describes as critical thinking. That writing is in some ways a way of getting your argument straight in your own head. So equally, don't try to read and support or break down an argument that's already in your mind. Try and be a bit more open-minded. Take the arguments together. Don't necessarily think, well, I'm going to approach this set of secondary sources with a conviction in my mind that the only argument is X. Actually do some reading, and when you're writing as well, just think through things, okay? Don't be convinced before you get into the weeds with this, as it were. So what can you do for yourself? Find secondary sources. Make a list of book chapters and articles that you want to read. Use library search. Use JSTOR to find those books and articles, particularly if the ones that you want might be checked out. You might need to wait for them. Use the library information sheet that I've referenced on Learning Central. Use JSTOR that I've mentioned as well. Remember, not everything is online. That there is material that you can obtain in hard copy as well. I mentioned here JSTOR's text analyzer. That's quite an interesting option. You'll see on JSTOR a thing called text analyzer. You can upload academic PDFs. So an article on the English Civil Wars, for example, it will analyze the text in it and give you some returns of material that is in a similar area to that, and that can be quite handy, quite useful. You need to organise these secondary sources into a manageable reading schedule for yourself. Give yourself time, again, and be able to have space to think as well as simply to read, take notes, and to write up your essay. So this is 60% of the marks for the module. Organise your resources into that manageable reading schedule. Give yourself some space. Make sure you're not trying to read 10 articles in a week. You know, remember that something happens in late December. It's called Christmas. And that's going to take up quite a bit of your time as well. Make sure that you're working on this from the middle of the semester. Think about reading actively, taking notes on quotes and sources. Make sure that you identify where you are quoting from a historian or where you're using their words and ideas verbatim. You can get into problems with plagiarism if you don't do that. Moving on to what we've done for you to help you with your assessment. How can we help with this exercise? Well, we provide office hours for your tutors. They are virtual ones, certainly at the present moment, but they will be spaces in the week when you should be able to drop in on your tutor to ask questions should you need to. We've also provided seminars that are geared to finding an argument in a piece of historical work and how to make an argument for yourself, what historiographical interventions look like. Historiographical interventions, by the way, mean the way in which historians make contributions, how they challenge historical arguments on different types of sources, and how you ought to read articles to follow up on sources and essay plans, and how you can structure your essay policy on reading drafts. We will not read drafts for you. This is university, this is not school. You need a greater degree of independent judgment and critical assessment here. We'll give advice, excuse me. Bless me. Generally, I think the sort of seminar tutors are open to thinking about, giving you advice, but will not read drafts for you. They will say, yes, that sounds like a good direction to go in, that yes, I would develop this bit, try reading around that, but they will not go over your introduction and say if it's good or bad. They will not go over a draft and say, yes, that's right or wrong. There are also, be aware, and again, this is really important, there are writing guides, style guides, and referencing guides on the History and Practice website and on Learning Central. And if I turn to this screen for a moment, you can see down the bottom here, supporting materials, writing and referencing guides. Now at the moment, these will probably be 2021 writing guides, but nevertheless, they are very helpful. You can, for example, House Referencing Style Guide for History. If we download that, give it a sec. It's always longer. There you go. You will find there when to effective referencing, house style for historians, how to reference, how to use footnotes, and so on and so forth. So there's quite a lot of material on the Learning Central site, how to find items, how to reference items, and a short guide to essays, for example, that we have provided there for you. That should help you and enable you to write good essays. Also be aware, again on here, that we have provided you with marking criteria. Marking criteria do what they say on the tin. They are the criteria by which your essays are assessed and marked. You can find it, as I've just shown you, on the History and Practice Learning Central site. And this is what the marking criteria look like. As you can see here, this is designed to give you some insight into some overview into what we're looking for in your assessments and your written work. You can see that it goes from the exceptional top firsts right down into the lower second class, third, high 2-1s, and so on. You can see, for example, the sorts of things we're after. I can illustrate this PowerPoint here. If we take a look at the way it's broken down for a first class question, there you go. You can see we're thinking about the approach to knowledge, the quality of argument, highly focused response. Some attempt to situate the topic within wider scholarly frameworks to show some intellectual independence. An excellent analysis, mostly independent analysis, that sustains an argument throughout and is given a wide range of reading, a wide range of appropriate scholarship, that's set out in a way that's clear and logical. We go down the marking grades somewhat. You can see the language begins to shift downwards itself. It shows that there's now some intellectual independence, although that may be more descriptive. But it has conclusions that cover the main points and have signs of critical approach that do not rely on lecture material. I suppose it's important for you to be aware of what you don't want, what's a fail, because this is guidance, I guess, on what not to do. Know that you don't read the question properly, you don't answer the question properly. Almost all of the material is irrelevant to the topic. For a low fail, it's ill-focused throughout, that you have limited knowledge of the concepts and issues that are being covered. It's overly dependent upon, your own idea, your own ideas without the scholarship in there. You just made it up, in other words. You don't show any of your own argument, or it's poorly developed. Very little evaluation. So you see that I've mentioned several times here argument and how argument is important. And it truly is. So very obviously then, let's start thinking about ice cream. What can you do for yourself? You can make an argument. This is really significant, okay? So here's a phrase that shouldn't appear in the introduction. I'm going to explore the differences between chocolate and salted caramel ice cream and decide whether they are more similar or more different. Whether's quite a bad word, because it sets up a discussion in which you don't actually argue anything. You simply sort of decide on your own version as to whether they're more similar or more different. In fact, you really do need to argue something. Now, here's a good introduction, one that sets up the sort of things in a genuinely argumentative way. Be aware, of course, this is about ice cream. So this essay argues that salted caramel is better than chocolate ice cream. It will concentrate on elements of sweetness, savouriness, popularity, and quality of flavour in making this judgment. Salted caramel ice cream is superior to chocolate because it strikes a balance between sweetness and saltiness, and because its current popularity has raised the expectations that ice cream consumers have. Although chocolate ice cream does offer advantages in terms of popularity, this, it will be argued, is mostly due to outdated pensioners who artificially inflate sales figures because this was the first thing they ever tried after rationing. An examination of the literature on ice cream is discussed in these terms, showing how scholarship on ice cream has largely shifted. It's largely written by the chocolate-loving post-war generation. Recent studies have shown the demographic shift to salted caramel, which supports the idea that this is the superior frozen dessert. So you can see we've set up an argument right the way through, and I'm going to say that salted caramel is better than chocolate for these reasons. Now, there's a problem because a lot of people like chocolate, but I'm going to show you how I'm going to overcome. There's a different approach, introduction 2. This essay argues it's a false assumption to try and choose between chocolate and salted caramel ice cream because they're similar in temperature and colour. They're both desserts. The argument that we should discount chocolate because of the demographic of its consumers is ageist. It discriminates against a large cohort of ice cream lovers. Whilst it can be argued that the two ice creams should be distinguished because they taste different, their use as accompaniments to brownies and other puddings suggests that these differences are outweighed by their similarities. An examination of first-hand account of ice cream consumption, advertising material and taste evaluations supports these claims. So we've got some structures already set up in these introductions. That's important for your foregrounding of an argument. It engages with the question, sets up what the structure is going to be, and tells the reader. So this is response 1. I'm going to say salted caramel is superior, period. We're going to talk about, sweetness, savouriness, the popularity of demographic problems in the nature of those who support chocolate. It can be argued that chocolate's better because it's, but it's, it's a more common choice. However, this is attributable to older enthusiasts who are overrepresented. Response 2, quite similar. The ice cream's quite similar, shouldn't choose between them. The introduction outlining that point, similar qualities of temperature and colour, nature of dessert should be assessed comparatively, put some scholarship in, then come to a conclusion. So in both of these we have a position, we have an argument that is adopted. It's clearly stated in the introduction. Now this argument directly addresses the question, so that's really important. Evidence is rehearsed and discussed in the body of the text, and that it acknowledges that there are counter-arguments. Here on response 1, that a lot of people like chocolate. Response 2, that you might say that we shouldn't choose between them. But I'm going to argue that that counter-argument isn't sufficiently strong to scupper my own argument. So argument's really important. You have a position that's adopted, it addresses the question directly, it acknowledges a counter-argument. And what's bad about this so far? Well, we haven't got any references yet. We need to have those, of course, when we reference a specific historian, quote from a secondary source, and I'm going to have to include a footnote. I've not discussed this plan yet with my tutor, and that might be a good idea. So what else can you do for yourself? Editing. Editing is really, really important. You get a blank sheet of paper, a blank computer screen, you write down a successful essay, you leave. That's it, right? No. You need to make mistakes first. You need to get it wrong before you get it right. You need to write some stuff down and you need to change it. That's what historians do. I do not write an article that's 8,000 to 10,000 words long. Straight off. Put the full stop, do it by the deadline, submit it, and walk away. I write a draft. I edit the draft. I make sure the draft makes sense. And I make sure that it's the best it can be. And that needs time. So give yourself time to edit as well as to write. Might be an idea for you to write your essay, then put it aside for a few days and come back to it with fresh eyes, because you see things then that you didn't see initially. And go over your essay several times. Make sure you footnote it where you need to. Proofread things is important. Now this might sound weird, but it's often good to read out your essay to yourself. You can hear things. You can also get Word to read your essay out to you. Here's a piece of text that can illustrate this. If you go into review, you can see that there's a read aloud tab. Okay? If you read aloud, but reading your essay aloud can actually help you identify the points where it doesn't make sense or it doesn't work. And again, it needs time to edit it down, to take out the corrections, to make sure that it fits together. Now, when you're submitting your essay, that will be done through Learning Central. Remember to footnote when you refer to an historian, to their works, or to any primary sources or websites. Remember as well that you're going to need to include a bibliography in your essay. That's for all your history essays. Okay. I'm also going to return to here. You will see, it might not be set up as yet, but you will be able to see in this assessment and feedback section here, a thing called Turnitin. Now, Turnitin will be where you will submit your essays. Okay. All of your essays will be put through a Turnitin portal. The deadline for your essay for this module is the 13th of January 2022. Okay, these deadlines, all the other deadlines, they are on Learning Central. They are also to be found on Sims. You can find them everywhere. There is no excuse for not knowing when your deadlines are. Log into Learning Central. Okay, you'll see Turnitin and you follow that link. Now, Turnitin is a piece of software that checks for plagiarism. Now, don't freak out if you have a percentage that looks a bit high, like 25 or 28%. Unfortunately, the software actually includes the cover sheet that comes along with the essay, because it's seen it a million times, it thinks it's been plagiarized. Now, you haven't plagiarized it, okay, but, anytime you see abnormally high levels of similarity, you might want to go back and check just to make sure that you've referenced everything, because you can check where those are being highlighted through the Turnitin software. Sometimes, however, it's just the standard bits that will bring you up a sort of a submission, like similarity, likeness, if you like, of sort of 25, 30%, something like What you need to do now is make sure you get a confirmation email from Turnitin after submitting. If you don't, that means your essay's not been submitted, we haven't received it. Also, do not submit this just 10 minutes before the deadline. If you submit it and you have problems, technical problems, we do not accept those as reasons why you were late, unless you give us plenty of time and warning. And so simply, trying to submit it an hour beforehand and it doesn't work and you can't get it in, I'm afraid that will be counted as a non-submission. All right? So please make sure that you give yourself time to read, time to take notes, time to edit, and time to submit this material. So in summary then, there's lots of stuff you can do for yourself to make sure that you're successful in the major assessment on this module. Read the question, follow the instructions, find the materials. Think about what we've done for you as well and make use of that, okay? We identify how you make an argument. We give you guidance on how to edit and how to proofread. You should be laughing. Use this presentation, clunky as it might be, as a resource for thinking about assessment. It's a guide for how we employ the virtual learning environment tests and the long essay. Also, don't forget about the shorter essay abstract, which needs to be submitted as well in week 5. I'm sure that you'll be fine. Make sure you contact your seminar tutor if you have any real problems. Otherwise, I'm there too. Thanks for your attention with this. Good luck with everything. I know you'll be absolutely fine.